Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've all been waiting for, the 50% uniform discount event is now live for the next 2 weeks. So take your time. This is my standard PSA. Never FOMO. In Marvel Future Fight, there's only one rule. It's the golden rule. It happens forever, and it'll never change. And it is this. Characters always get replaced. Uniforms always get replaced. So do not feel FOMO. Please try not to feel FOMO, which is fear of missing out. I know we always talk on this channel about like, oh, you should get this. Oh, this is a must buy. Highly recommended, yada, yada, yada. Listen, you don't. You can beat the whole game without having any uniform on almost any character. Now, beating the game is obviously subject to change and subject to interpretation, but you can do a lot in this game without spending a lot. So I just wanted to put that PSA out there. As we kick off this, momentous occasion. This is always such a fun little tradition of talking about the best uniforms in the game for the 50% discount. We've already started the list, as you can see, because I wanted to save some time, because I wanted to have a bit more time to talk about some of the other uniforms in depth. But this is a somewhat similar list to what we had a few months ago for Black Friday. I've just added in the category of good, which is pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, let's kick it off by just explaining what we've already done. We have the Legendary Battle Rewards. Now, all of these uniforms are uniforms that you're going to need to purchase if you want to combine them with their, matching Legendary Battles in order to get the rewards. So, in the case of the Loki, Thor, and Hela ones from Ragnarok, there's no Legendary Battle to buy, which makes them the best uniforms, and that's why they're ranked like this, for a CTP of Energy, a P card, and another P card. But then for Iron Man, for the CTP, I believe, or the New Avengers 9 card, for the CTP, for the Judgment CTP for Shang-Chi, from Shang-Chi's Legendary Battle, from the 10 Rings, and then from the Ant-Man and the Wasp, the first Ant-Man and the Wasp Legendary Battle, the Pimtron Giant Man uniform to get the CTP selector. You have to buy these uniforms. There's more uniforms in this. There's like the Taskmaster uniform, etc. But these are just the ones that are going to highlight with the best possible rewards, especially since you can guarantee yourself a top 5 PvP card and then a very good PvE CTP. So yeah, these are pretty straightforward, but just keep in mind that the last three, they have to be combined with a Legendary Battle that costs 2,500 crystals. That's why they're good uniforms to consider purchasing. Not as first purchases, not as a brand new player, but even an intermediate player, just 3-4 months in the game, it's not a bad idea to consider spending 875 crystals to pick this up to then get yourself a CTP of Energy. It's one of the best deals in the game for just getting a CTP straight up. And then we have the cannot buy category. It still makes me sad. I mentioned this last time, but it still makes me sad how many good uniforms are here. And it's a bit of a double-edged sword because you want these uniforms to be good because they're seasonal, but then because they're seasonal, they're only available in a 2-week window, 52 weeks out of the year. So 50 weeks out of the year, we have to tell people, oh, sorry, they're not available. And that happens to be now. There are literally no seasonals available right now. I still think the devs should consider like a 3-day special where some of the seasonals get brought back temporarily, even with no discount. But hey, who am I? I'm not a marketer for Marvel Future Fight. I'm just a 9-year player. We have to add to this list, of course, the newest ones, Satana and Angel. These are not the best seasonals, but they're the newest. I tried to rank them in terms of their age, except I screwed up here on Thanos and Squirrel Girl. But yeah, otherwise, they're basically almost all organized by when they were released, not by how good they are, but in any event, they're not available, so that kind of sucks. Buyer beware. This is a pretty straightforward category. These are uniforms that may be for characters that are very high level, high rank in terms of being tier 4, maybe characters that I have tier 4, etc. But I do believe that these are not necessarily good uniforms to purchase for one reason or another. One being that they're just not going to perform as well as other uniforms, or if I think these uniforms are in danger of being replaced soon because the characters are popular. In the case of someone like Scarlet Witch, she's a very popular character, and she hasn't had a uniform for a couple of years now. It's pretty much, the clock is essentially ticking. You also have characters who have great uniforms for their time, but that time has sort of passed now, like Jane Foster and Kamala Khan. Uniforms that I was just straight up disappointed with because they didn't do enough for the character. Uniforms that seem good because they're support uniforms, but they're not really that useful. It's almost like a sideways buff for the character. I include with that the new Ebony Maw. I know he's better for PvP and stuff if you tier 4 him, but as a support uniform, he's literally almost exactly the same. It's like 5%. You can't even notice it. So yeah, I think these uniforms are just not very great and sort of either past their prime or just didn't go far enough to make the character justifiable and sort of useful. Oh yeah, we have 2 more seasonals to add, sorry, to the list. We have, unfortunately, Rogue and Coulson. Yeah, so 4 uniforms added to the list. Then we get to the good category. Now, we'll do that one later. We're actually going to fill out the rest of it first because we want to talk about the support gods. There's some really good support gods like Shuri. Shuri's very, very good. Excellent support. Same with Sif. Excellent generic support with a combat-focused leadership. Taskmaster is another excellent support. And doesn't have an artifact yet, I believe. Angela is a decent support. Angela. And then we have Valkyrie, one of the best supports in the game. There are some characters, like I would say, for example, Sif and Ironheart are really good examples of characters. They're not even support characters without these uniforms, right? Same thing goes with Angela. She's not even a support character at all without her uniform. So it may be more valuable to pick these up and then just stick with your no uniform Taskmaster, your no uniform Shuri, etc. Because they're still going to give you that value as a support without needing the uniform. In Shuri's case, she's actually a good damage dealer, especially for new players, whereas Valkyrie and the rest don't really, they're not really going to do that much. So, it's something to consider. You also have quite a bit less of a support legend, but Robbie Reyes is a good support, great support for Ghost Rider, Just make sure that you have his artifact. Otherwise, I don't know if it's worth it, to be honest. I also think she wasn't on the other list, but I actually think Enchantress is worth considering. Very strong support, very, very good support. Ronan is another really good support nowadays, especially with his leadership for Universals and his artifact having buff, so that's quite nice. Not so good anymore, but still worth mentioning maybe now and then is Ancient One. I would say her support for PvP is waning. It's basically almost gone, almost completely evaporated, but she's still a great support for PvE with Ignore Dodge and Elemental damage, which is quite nice. But yeah, last year I said she could go in PvP gods or supports. That's not the case anymore at all. And then She-Hulk. She-Hulk, I think, is a really good lead, still underrated in my opinion. Also has a support buff for Gamma Allies. Gamma Allies not really making any noise in PvE, but it's still something worth, right? If and when Hulk gets a new uniform, if it's PvE focused or whatever, or if they juice that boy up like they did last time, he could be very, very good. Now I want to talk about PvP gods. So the PvP gods category is going to see a little bit of a shakeup here. We do have Wolverine for sure. He's near the top. We have Silver Surfer, who's basically at the top. We have the new Thanos uniform at the top as well. The thing here that's nice about these two and the sort of differentiation I want to make between Silver Surfer, Thanos, and everybody else is they kind of don't need their artifacts. The nice thing here as well is you can't get Pharmos, but you can get Thanos, but he's only for PvP. I wouldn't really... I mean, he can do PvE, but really, it's PvP. But they don't really need their artifacts. It's helpful, but it's not like a necessity. It's not automatic. With Wolverine, it's automatic. He needs the artifact. Without the artifact, it's not happening. It's genuinely not happening. Same thing sort of goes for Adam, I would say. A bit less so than Wolverine, so maybe you do that. And he does have the type advantage over Wolverine. I personally like Wolverine more than Adam these days, but I know a lot of people don't agree with me, so I will do that. That's just a personal opinion I have. I won't go into detail on that because it's just not worth eating into time on the video. But yeah, Adam does need the artifact a little bit more so, I would say, than Wolverine does. Wolverine desperately needs it. Spider-Man is waning. I wouldn't call him... I almost want to put him here in the good category. And this is like a catch-all good. This is good for PvE and good for PvP, but not meta, not like outstanding, not a god, right? So I would say, yeah, this is probably what makes more sense for him at the moment. I would also say, some people are going to disagree with me here, but I think Strife, he's really good for PvP, and he has that debuff lead, the debuff passive that's really good for Otherworld Battle, but he gets debuffed so often, and he doesn't have any other buffs for Otherworld Battle, whereas Wasp has those extra passive buffs with the HP, and a lot of people have an insight on Wasp, but they feel bad, getting a Epic Quest Deluxe Pack character unlock, and then tier 3ing him and buying his uniform, and he's native tier 2, and then giving him an insight, so they don't give Strife an insight, but then he's not as valuable as Wasp or Colossus because of that, right? Colossus is a different story because he doesn't have the debuff thing, but you sort of get where I'm going with this, right? It's like tier 4ing Angel for the debuff thing and then giving him an insight. Like, no one's going to do that, right? That'd be like, well, there's some whales out there who are purely psychotic, but, it goes without saying. I also missed Ebony from the support legends, but yeah, I still think his last uniform is solid. I wouldn't necessarily purchase his last uniform. Like, if you don't have any uniform for Ebony, then yeah, the new one is, I would just get it because it's better for offense. But I wouldn't say, again, let me just make this clear. If you have this uniform for Ebony, you don't need the new one. If you don't have any uniform for Ebony, just get the newest one. So the old adage is still true from our future fight. If you're in doubt about a character and you want to buy a uniform for them, just always get their newest uniform. The newest uniform is always the best one. I know this is going to confuse some people, but I've explained it, so hopefully it's not confusing anymore. For PvE gods, I want to cover this really quickly before we go further with the PvP gods. I'm actually going to put Jean here. Yeah. I think her reign as a PvP god is in jeopardy, especially for one-on-one content like Timeline Battle. She just doesn't keep up with Thanos and Surfer, and with the possibility with the high possibility of Sentry getting a tier 4, she could be, you know, on her last breaths here. It'll be very unlikely. It's possible, but it's very unlikely that a new tier 4 for PvP, like Null, like Sentry, like a PvP god, is somehow really good against Surfer and Thanos and the other metas, and then really bad against Jean. They would have to do some really kinky sort of changes where they lower their elemental resistances. It's possible. It's possible. Anything can happen, but for the meantime, Jean is still really, really good for PvE, and she's actually meta for ABX and ABL with the, you know, female villain days and the universal villain female stuff. So yeah, because of that, you know, she still deserves praise there, and she still deserves her spot. But yeah, just keep that in mind. Gladiator also very, very strong for PvE content. Absolutely a god. After that, though, I'm a little bit... I guess I put Captain Marvel here. She's good. She's good. She's good. She's good, and she's meta. Cable definitely deserves to be there. He's good, and he's meta. I'd probably put them like... I'm trying to intentionally rank them, by the way, so just keep that in mind. They are being intentionally ranked. After that, it's kind of tough. I think Odin is good, but he's been replaced by Gladiator, more or less. It's close, but he has been replaced. But I still think Odin is very strong. He's super fast for GBR, super strong for World Boss content as well. Another thing I would say about Odin is he's very strong at level 80, which, you know, not every tier 4 here you can say that about. So just keep that in mind. He's very, very strong at 80. I also think Miles is really strong at 80, and he's even stronger at tier 4, but at this point, he's just not meta. Like, I wouldn't call him a god. He is very, very good, though, but I would probably put him in the good category. I expanded this category, and I created it strictly because I see these characters now. Like, I think Doctor Strange is good. I think Black Panther is good, but they're just not meta anymore. They've been replaced. It's unfortunate that most of these are native tier 2, but they've just been replaced at the top. So I didn't want to, you know, not feature these uniforms at all because I do think they're good. And by the way, Beta Ray Bill, he's good, and he's also support legend. So very, very valuable uniform. Yeah. If I had to give like a top 5, I might try to do like a top 5 ranking at the end. But just keep that in mind. Buyer Beware, I also wanted to add in. I know I'm like going all over the place, but I'm just seeing them and adding them in here. I wanted to add Namor. He's basically being replaced in all content. He's not bad by any means, but there are just better options across the board, whether you're looking at mutants, whether you're looking at combat, whether you're looking at villains. Same thing goes with Thor. Again, just been replaced so many times now by alien hero males that it's just kind of, he's done. I also want to put Cap here. A lot of people were speculating we were going to get an Avengers update because of the Captain America icon, but now people see it's from the S.H.I.E.L.D. archive, so it's probably not happening. I don't think he's necessarily going to get a uniform anytime soon, but I do think he was sort of overhyped. He never really materialized as a PvP threat, and although his PvE stuff is pretty good and he hits pretty hard and he's very tanky, again, he doesn't keep up with the likes of Gladiator, Dr. Octopus. He just kind of gets blown out of the water there. As far as, man, there's still so many. Okay, let's get this going. I think Sharon is a PvE god strictly for World Boss, but I do think I've kind of underrated her. I think it's possible she gets another uniform, by the way, though. Just keep that in mind. I think, yeah, it's every year it's on the table for Luna, Crescent, and Sharon. So, you know, it's a bit of buyer beware there for those that are wondering. I still really like Green Goblin. I don't know if I'd call him a PvE god, but he's also an amazing support slash lead, so I think putting him here is justifiable. I know Mystique exists. I don't like Mystique personally, and she needs to be tier 4 to really shine. That's a really tall order. So if you're asking me tier 3 Green Goblin or tier 4 Mystique, yeah, Green Goblin's way more value overall. That being said, if you're pushing for max ABX scores, then you know already that Mystique is needed, but I honestly don't think, like, I think she's a bum. So me personally, I want to rank her here. But if people are going to disagree with me, that's fine. You can go ahead and disagree with me. Hela, I think, is also a god here. I will rank her here, especially because of her flexibility for both PvE and PvP. But I think, again, the asterisk is needed. She kind of needs to be tier 4 or she needs to have a very stacked tier 3 build. So for PvP, she needs a Mighty Brilliant CTP and a 5-6 star artifact. For PvE, she doesn't need the artifact, but she needs a Mighty or Brilliant CTP, and you need to be able to proc well with her, or you need to be very aggressive in your rage play. Not for ABX, ABL, mind you, besides being a leadership in some, situations, but yeah, only for other content like that does she provide usefulness. So yeah, she's kind of on the cusp, I would say. I still think she's better value than Sharon, but it is something that's worth sort of calculating in your mind. I have a hard time here. I think Shadow Shell's buyer beware, personally. I think Spider-Gwen is good. Unfortunately, Luna exists, so Spider-Gwen can only go so far, but I think this is a reasonable place to put her. Hulk, I think, is really on the cusp these days of being a PvP god. I don't think he's really there anymore, so I would put him in good, unfortunately. I think Carnage is still a PvP god, but he is slipping. He's basically at the end of the rope, and if any more strong PvP characters come out that he can't check for some reason because they're not speed types or whatever, then he's going to get pushed out. He just needs a very high damage build with like a very stacked artifact to survive as long as possible, and in a lot of cases as well, he needs Agent Venom. And that's why I've included Agent Venom this time, not only for Carnage's sake, but also because he double dips as a support for Silver Surfer. So again, it's a very niche support, but it's very, very strong if you have a very stacked build, i.e., you have the artifact, you have the tier 4 Silver Surfer, you have the artifact tier 4 for Carnage, and then you have the Agent Venom, and you have his artifact, right? It's a lot that's asked of you as a player to build all that, but if you have those tools, yeah, his uniform is big. It's very, very big for support and stuff like that. Yeah, Emma, I think at this point is buyer beware. You could maybe argue that she's on the cusp of good, but nah. I also think Titania is buyer beware. Just keep in mind, because we have, of course, Hope, but then even Nebula. I still think she's a good leadership, so you could argue that she deserves to be here, but it's very, very niche. It's just for 1 day every 2 weeks of ABX. It's a lot to ask, right? It's a lot to ask. I would say, yeah, it's kind of 50-50. Rachel, I think Rachel's good. Don't get me wrong, for PvP. She's not bad. She requires a lot, the artifact, etc. Buying her, for one. But I think she's a little bit, I don't want to say overrated, but yeah, I'm not too high on her, okay? And then last but not least, we have Loki. Yeah, I don't really think he deserves to be a god, to be honest with you. I think Loki's good. I think Loki's good. He's probably somewhere around here. The problem with Loki is he needs a max build, right? I need a max win to really shine. Without that, he's just kind of mediocre with an average build or so slightly above average build. It needs to be a max build. But yeah, I wanted to include more uniforms this time. So if you're wondering why it seems kind of overwhelming, or like every category, every tier is so stacked, that it's because of that. I wanted to cover more. I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't necessarily think all of these uniforms you should buy. I think, maybe having 3 or 4 in each of the first 3 categories is probably important for most players, right? Like having, Jean, Dr. Octopus, and Cable, and then Silver Surfer, Wolverine, and Thanos, and whatever, you get what I'm saying. But obviously some uniforms are going to have more value for you than others based on your needs, based on your target goals, whether you're trying to get higher in PvE for scores, for world boss stages, for GBR speed, or whether you're trying to, place in a competitive PvP alliance, whether it's for Alliance Tournament or Alliance Conquest or whatever the case may be, or you're just solo goals trying to grind up to Challenger or stay in Challenger for Timeline Battle. Whatever the case may be, you obviously, have different uniforms that you need to focus on. But hopefully this has been as thorough as I can be, and as helpful as I can be, and as clear. I will have another video as well for the optional uniforms that are optionals for lots of strong characters, so you can get the best bang for your buck there. That video will come out in a few days. In the meantime, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching this one. I appreciate it. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.